Okay, let's dive right into our explainer on the rapidly escalating crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. We're on day 65 of this war, and man, the events of just the last 24 hours have absolutely shattered the status quo. What used to be a tense standoff has suddenly ignited into a highly volatile multi-front confrontation. We're going to break down exactly what's happening, why it's happening, and what it all means for the rest of the world, just sticking to the facts on the ground. To really wrap our heads around the sheer gravity of today's developments, we just need to look at one number: 7. In a massive, lethal escalation, the United States military just sank 7 small Iranian boats. According to reports, these vessels were trying to directly interfere with U.S. operations smack in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz. So yeah, this is a direct, kinetic engagement. Any illusion of a quiet standoff, completely gone. But the human toll here goes way beyond just the military. Right now, there are literally 20,000 seafarers stranded on commercial ships. They're trapped in what's quickly become the most dangerous waterway in the world. We're looking at a huge, looming humanitarian crisis for these crews, who are basically just caught in the crossfire of a massive geopolitical blockade.
And the immediate economic shockwave? It's already hitting home. U.S. gas prices have suddenly surged to $4.46 a gallon. That's the highest we've seen in nearly 4 years. Oil market experts are actually warning that if this strait stays closed, we could easily see that number blow right past the $5 mark. The squeeze is definitely on, and we're all feeling it directly at the pump.
All right, let's move into part 1, the 24-hour escalation. To actually understand this breaking point, we've got to look at the exact 24-hour window that triggered the whole thing. The really crucial piece of the puzzle here is Project Freedom. This is President Trump's direct attempt to bust through a massive shipping blockade. To give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, the U.S. has already turned around 48 Iranian ships in just the last 20 days. So Project Freedom was launched as a humanitarian move, basically providing armed military escorts for commercial ships from uninvolved countries just to guide them safely out of the strait. The timeline really highlights the sheer speed of this crisis. It kicks off Sunday night, with Trump announcing the operation on Truth Social, warning that any interference would be dealt with forcefully. Bam, by Monday morning, U.S. Central Command confirmed the first American-flagged merchant vessels had successfully made it through the strait under military escort. And then, today, the immediate blowback. Iran retaliates and the U.S. sinks those 7 Iranian boats. From a social media post to sunk vessels in under 48 hours. It's moving incredibly fast.
Which brings us to part 2, the global economic fallout.
Because these military maneuvers in the Gulf, they're translating into an immediate, everyday impact for countries all over the map. This isn't just some isolated regional conflict. It's a literal strangulation of international trade. Like we talked about, U.S. gas is hitting $4.46. Over in the UK, the Royal Navy is reporting a jaw-dropping 90% drop in shipping traffic through Hormuz, which is just hammering consumers with record fuel prices. For Canada and Australia, every single ship that doesn't pass means less oil on the global market, and that entirely dictates their pump prices. But for the UAE and Germany, the threat has escalated way beyond economics. The UAE actually just faced its largest missile attack since the ceasefire began. Iran fired ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones, all at once. The threat was so severe that UAE schools have entirely shifted to remote learning for the week. Thankfully, Israel had secretly deployed an Iron Dome defense system to the UAE earlier in the war, and that managed to intercept at least 3 of those missiles. So, let's get into part 3. A dead ceasefire. Let's pivot from the economic pain to the actual geopolitical reality on the ground, because the way leaders are talking about this war is wildly different from what's actually happening out on the water. It's a stark contrast. On the rhetoric side, Trump recently told Congress that hostilities have terminated, saying there's been no exchange of fire since the April 7th ceasefire. Meanwhile, Iran is officially insisting there's no military solution. But let's look at reality. The U.S. literally just sank 7 boats, Iran launched a massive coordinated attack on the UAE, and Iranian state media even claimed they hit a U.S. destroyer with 2 missiles, a claim that U.S. Central Command has absolutely denied, by the way. But honestly, regardless of that denied strike, the reality proves one thing for sure: the April 7th ceasefire exists strictly on paper. And yet, right in the middle of all this crossfire, we get this statement. Iran's foreign minister issued a warning against the U.S. and the UAE getting drawn into a quagmire. He explicitly stated, events in Hormuz make clear there is no military solution to a political crisis. It's this fascinating, deep paradox, right? Escalating military force on the ground, firing missiles, sinking boats, but simultaneously and publicly acknowledging that those bullets and missiles won't actually resolve the underlying conflict.
That leads us right into part 4,
where this war goes next.
So, what do all these developments actually mean for the trajectory of the war? Well, here's how the situation breaks down. First off, Project Freedom is a massive, incredibly high-stakes gamble by the US to break the stranglehold without triggering a full-scale all-out war. But Iran's fierce response clearly shows they're willing to fight for control of that waterway. Second, as we just saw, both sides paradoxically know that a political deal is the only real, lasting solution. Which brings us to the third point. Iran has actually put forward a 14-point proposal calling for all issues to be resolved within a 30-day timeline. They're aiming to end the war entirely, not just pause it. So we're kind of left with this binary outcome. Either the intense pain and danger of today's current escalation forces both sides to the negotiating table to ink a diplomatic deal, or it's going to push them so far apart that the whole region spirals completely out of control.
I want to leave you with a final, really critical thought based on today's massive escalations. We've got 20,000 sailors trapped, global economies holding their collective breath, and active missiles flying over the Gulf. Looking at the sheer force being deployed by both sides right now, we have to ask, will this U.S. military escort operation, Project Freedom, ultimately succeed in reopening the waters? Or will Iran actually manage to shut down the Strait of Hormuz completely? Take a moment to think about what the facts are telling us, and definitely keep your eyes on the strait.